So, just quickly on behalf of the center, my name is Duntrip. I'm the SPC at the center, and I wanted to once again welcome Ondy to our virtual Gompa until we can have her back in our physical Gompa in Santa Fe, which we're all hoping happens in the not too distant future. Um, Ondy is a very valuable, cherished member of our online faculty. She's been teaching for a couple of years now, on and off, and it's always a wonderful time. Ondy's website is available on the faculty page if you want to check out her website. She's the author of a wonderful book on the spiritual, on living, what's it called again, Ondy? I'm sorry, the
I was
mindfulness
just
with
waiting for you to trip
mind,
up on it. Thinking
mindfulness
of
with
what is it
attitude.
called? I have to remind myself. It's called Spiritual Rebellion,
Spiritual.
Mindfulness with Attitude. That's what it's called.
So that's available wherever books are sold. And I think that maybe will be informing to some degree the information being shared. So over to you. Thank you so much for teaching it again. And Anandi was very gracious in stepping in at the very last moment as our schedule fell apart over the last couple of months. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's always nice to see you all again and join the virtual Gompa. I like that. That's what we are, isn't it? Okay, so yes, the spiritual warrior. It is a term that is commonly used, and I do have some lovely quotations from Buddhist masters here, which I know you're not always meant to read through what slides say, but the quotations are quite intense, so we'll go through them slowly as well. And I've been in India for 4 months, which has been quite a trip. And I was at Bodh Gaya, and then I was at Tushita, and that's why this was last minute because I've only been back in the UK for a week. And as I was saying earlier, I still feel jet lagged, but I keep telling myself it's jet lag, and then I remind myself of my age and realize that I need naps in the day now. So here I am, having had a nap with a full day of family. So I think probably very much like you guys, having chosen for whatever reason, right or wrong, not to take robes, I am a full blown family woman, yeah, as well as a working woman. So that is sometimes reassuring for people, who come to the centres and can't go that full distance for whatever reason, often because we're fully involved in life already and are householders. I was very interested to hear Geshe Lakdo talking to some newly ordained and also monks taking full ordination at Tushita. And he was saying, well, just remember that now you're not a householder, you have all the time to study and meditate. And I thought, yes, it's so true. As soon as you step back into your home, you're fixing this and looking after that, phoning this person and inviting them for lunch, and it's full on being a householder. But I ran a weekend course at Tushita called The Spiritual Warrior, and I hope you find it relevant because I think actually being a householder, we are right in the middle of the war. And I don't mean that, in what's going on in the world, but just in the war on dealing with all the conflicts that happen within and also the influences that happen without. We're right in the center of it. So it can be a very challenging, but nevertheless very nurturing space for our spirituality. So, first of all, let's just consider what we mean by this kind of contradictory flavor, the spiritual warrior. So, what we understand to be a warrior. So, if we think of fighters, let's consider, for instance, the foot soldier. they're in the army. They're doing as they're told with fear of reprisement, and they're following orders, um, regardless of whether they believe in the orders or not. That's their job, isn't it? Now, a warrior is different in that they think for themselves and they're guided by their own sense of morality. And then we can think perhaps in the world of people like terrorists, who are extremists and perhaps used as pawns in a battle they don't fully understand. And they're kind of brainwashed, yeah, kind of brainwashed into believing. Often very misguided people, very lost people are brought into that kind of fighting, and they just buy into a belief system that they feel will give their lives a meaning. So I think that's quite interesting in that even people who use physical violence and terror, they're still looking for meaning and they think that's going to bring them meaning. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to, there we go. So it's not someone driven by anger and seeking revenge, because we know that anger results in more anger. Warriors are honorable, they're committed to destroying what is unjust. And we're still talking about, I don't know whether you can think of an example of a warrior. I think of somebody like a samurai, or maybe the traditional idea of a Native American warrior when they're fighting for what they believe is right. So if you kind of visualize one, if you can, what that means to you, then I think you might come up with somebody who is passionate to defend what they believe to be true and right, one who is strong, great strength. They face their enemies and they're not afraid of death or being hurt because they believe so strongly in what they're fighting for. They don't use anonymity to bring fear into people's hearts. Yeah. So they fight bravely and they respect their opponent and is not there to wreak sadistic pleasure in others' pain. So, okay, so now let's add the word spiritual. So, within all religions, there's a call to look inwards and tend to our spiritual needs. So, anyone who follows any religion must become aware of why they pray and worship and take part in religious activities. It's not merely to belong or to identify with a race or creed. It's specifically to develop their relationship with their inner self. And whatever you want to call it, it moves us towards a greater way of being. So at any time in history, we can say that this is a path fraught with difficulties and obstacles. And today we might be feeling that it's now more crucial than ever to find a way to live that goes perhaps against the flow, and not be drawn into things just so that we feel. So it takes away some fear because we belong. So that's the difference. We need the special qualities of a spiritual warrior. So you could say that the objective of this talk is to awaken, because you're all ready. I think most of you may have been practicing for a long time. You might be quite new. This might be the first time you've heard anything like this. I don't know. But it's this talk, it's not for long. So it's kind of to awaken or refresh that aspect of ourselves that is the core purpose of our life, regardless of whether we're religious or not. And this, of course, is the central theme in my book, which Venerable Dundrum kindly referred to, which is that it's not so much about the religion has to support our spirituality. So it's a call to action or a reminder of why we're practicing the Dharma. So let's have a look at this lovely quotation of the Dalai Lama, which reinforces what I've just said. Spirituality, I take to be concerned with those qualities of the human spirit, such as love and compassion, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, contentment, a sense of responsibility, a sense of harmony, which brings happiness to both self and others. Yeah. So that sense of peace and contentment, you could say, is what we're all searching for, rightly or wrongly. Yeah? And there are many routes where we can say we're spiritual, but actually, unless you are developing these qualities, you're more likely to be simply religious with religious fervor rather than a genuine spiritual practitioner. So the Dalai Lama frequently addresses the heart of religion, always coming back to this is why we're practicing it. This is why we're practicing Buddhism. And you may remember when you first came into contact with Buddhism, it might have been through many doors. You might have had very profound teachings. I know some people who have just been brought to it by looking at the imagery, which is deeply symbolic. And it's not the images that we're worshipping, it's what they represent within ourselves. Yeah. So, in a way, you could say, I'm trying to ensure that when we're practicing Tibetan Buddhism or Buddhism, whichever flavor you're going for, that we want it to have a spiritual core. And in a way, is it religion versus spirituality? If we're very religious and then we say that we're right and other people are wrong, is that spiritual? And it would be wonderful if everybody did the same thing, really. So if we practice religion, it must serve these purposes. And if our religion becomes something that is just another aspect of our egos, then it's what we call spiritual materialism. Okay? So, yeah, so that takes me on to the next slide. There we are. So, spiritual materialism occurs when spiritual practice, teachings, or experiences are used to bolster the ego, creating a sense of superiority or self importance. So it's basically a way that the ego warps anything, including spirituality, to reinforce the self importance of the ego. Yeah? And it was coined by Chogyam Trungpa, and it's been used many times since. And if you want to investigate that further, it's still very, very relevant. The book Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. So, yeah, and we might not say these words, I'm more enlightened than you, but we might feel it when we talk to people. When we talk to people who aren't Buddhist, we think, well, I'm Buddhist, I know what I'm talking about. That's a danger, I think. It's a danger because then we're losing respect for others. My teachers are superior to your teachers. I think that's something, I mean, you can come up with your questions when after the teaching we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers and then finish with a meditation, I hope. Yeah. So, but it's something I've seen and experienced when I first got into Buddhism that you tend to think, well, the Gelugpa sect, the Dalai Lama, our teachers are better than the Kadampa teachers or the Kagyu teachers or whatever. You get this sense that you're still grouping, really. You found your group, you found your family, which is so important and so supportive. because on our own, it's extremely difficult to practice the spiritual path. Hence our refuge with Sangha. Yeah. So to just take care that we don't go down these routes. My practice is for advanced students only. Yeah. So sometimes you might get people who go, well, I'm doing this program. Oh, are you still doing are you still doing discovering Buddhism? I'm doing the basic program. I don't know, whatever. What you know what I mean? You sometimes get this sense, well, I'm still a newbie. I'm still me after all these years. What is it, 40 odd years now? In many ways, I'm still discovering Buddhism, actually, and we know that as practitioners that the layers of the onion just peel away all the time, and you'll be at a teaching that you've listened to and you've seen that teacher so many times, and suddenly something will make sense that didn't make sense before. It drops in. That's because you're ready. You've softened. You've softened that ego. I was doing this before you. Well, I've just said that, haven't I? Well, for some of you, anyway. It's like, I was his student, for 40 years. You've only known him for 2 years, as if that makes us better, um, more devoted. Um, we were the first students. Of course, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, but I mean, I've just been okay. I told you about Tushita. I'll tell you this lovely story. So the last time I was there was quite a long time ago, but 2012, 2013. I went 2 years running. 2012, there was a young man who sat before me, Renato Unterberger, Austrian boy in his 20s, kind of, the long hair, and he carried his ukulele around. He was a musician, and he did the introductory course I was doing, and then I did an intermediate course, and he attended that. And then I went down to Bulgaria for a month, and he turned up there. And then I didn't see him again. And then I went to Bulgaria, 1st of January, and within days, this tall monk appeared and said, Ondy, do you remember me? It was Renato, who is now Venerable Wando, yeah? And he became the resident teacher at Kushita. And his studies have been extensive. He's done the basic program. And I thought, wow, he probably knows more than me now. And yet, all those years ago, he was sitting there. So when we were up at Kushita, I was teaching this course introductory, he was doing an intermediate course, and we would both tell the students that you don't know what's coming next. You don't know who is going to, study more than you, get ordained. We just don't know where we are on the path. All we can tend to really is our own path. And it was a wonderful lesson for me, very beautiful to be teaching alongside of him. So here's another quotation from Thich Nhat Hanh, that wonderful Vietnamese teacher who passed on some time ago now, a year or two ago, a few years, I think. Spirituality is not religion. It is a path for us to generate happiness, understanding, and love, so we can live deeply each moment of our life. Having a spiritual dimension in our lives does not mean escaping life or dwelling in a place of bliss outside this world, but discovering ways to handle life's difficulties and generate peace, joy, and happiness right where we are on this beautiful planet. Yeah. So when we talk about the core of our being, this spiritual aspect, it's central. It's a central aspect of ourselves. We often take it to the heart chakra, don't we? This is where I'm not up here in the head, where the ego dominates, in the brain and the thoughts, but actually we meditate, we bring it down, and we have our mini realizations or great realizations. That's what we're nurturing and developing all the time. And if our religion helps us do that, then that's brilliant. So we're in a process of generating and developing the wise inner self, whatever we wish to identify it with. Some people might call that God, God within. Yeah. So this will free us to follow our spiritual path without getting distracted or sidetracked by worldly pursuits, which we're coming on to, because that's what we face, isn't it? Especially as householders. Yeah. So being aware of what makes us who we are brings us into a relationship with ourselves as a human being that is dynamic and powerful. It's not just a plod from day to day. So if we can embrace our life, whatever it's serving up, we know, the University of Life. Life is our education. Not if only I was in retreat. If only I could, go and study at this center, but I can't because I've got this responsibility. I can't afford it. It's to go, this is my life. This is what I have created for myself in order to learn from it. And only when I've learned from what I'm actually experiencing, me as this person in this life, in these conditions, in this environment, will anything else develop, which might be in the future, definitely in the future if it's in another life. Being human, just being human, gives us everything, everything we need for spiritual development, whatever happens to us. So, here we go. What is a spiritual warrior? The life of a spiritual warrior is a life of courage, compassion, strength, and discipline. This is a Hindu yogi. Yeah. So, how do we strengthen them? Yeah. So we know that, or some of us will know, this image is of Manjushri. In Tibetan Buddhism, he's also called Jamyang. Yeah. So in England, I don't know what you've got over there. I'm not sure whether you've got Jamyang. You've got Jamyang Buddhist Center in London, Jamyang Buddhist Center in Leeds. And actually, when I first joined the Tibetan Buddhist Center in the Lake District, before it became something else, it was called Manjushri Institute. Yeah. So the actually Manjushri, it tends to imply gentleness, but it's all but it he's called the Lord of Wisdom, the Lord of Wisdom. And if you look at him, there's nothing, he hasn't got any war stripes, war paint, or he's not fierce, he's not got all his muscles built up. There he is, sitting with the Prajnaparamita Sutra in his left hand and a flaming sword in the right hand. But look at it. It's not outward, is it? It's raised. Yeah. So he's the embodiment of the enlightened wisdom of all the Buddhas, realizing the ultimate nature of reality. His left hand holds the stem of a lotus flower, which supports the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which is the text that reveals the method for developing insight and realizing wisdom. And his right hand, the flaming sword, symbolizing the power of that wisdom to cut through ignorance. So now we're getting there, aren't we? The root of all our suffering. So I mentioned the samurai before, and I just wanted to refer you to that because that's quite an interesting development how um, Buddhism arrived in Japan in the 6th century, and it played a significant role in samurai culture. Zen Buddhism, in particular, it became popular amongst the samurai, and it influenced their discipline, their focus, and their ability to overcome the fear of death. Now, the Japanese samurai generally held their opponents in high respect, viewing them as worthy adversaries and not simply enemies. So this respect stemmed from the Bushido Code. I think it's pronounced like that, might be wrong, which emphasized honor, loyalty, and justice. And they were also known to have a strong sense of self-discipline and were not likely to attack first or engage in dishonorable tactics. Oh, that's very interesting, isn't it? It's sort of supporting this idea of, yes, if you have to fight um, for right and justice and truth, you don't reduce others to by using insults and labels. I had teachings, I was very lucky, excuse me for referring to all this, but it's been my experience. Kushita had the 15 Days of Miracles, and they invited lots of Rinpoches to give teachings there. And I met Sokan Rinpoche in Bogai and there. And he was very strong on that we should never use insults, never label people. Yeah. And I was recently watching something where I would consider a very mistaken comments from a rabbi. He may not be typical, calling um, calling the Arab culture savages and camel riders. And also we've just over here in Europe, we've celebrated the 80th anniversary of VE Day when the Second World War ended, which of course Americans were really strongly involved in. And it was very interesting to think about how the Nazis were able to do what they did because they didn't refer to them as human beings. So it shows that deep within our nature, we have this sense of we cannot treat others badly if we see them as being equal to ourselves in wanting happiness and not to suffer. So people who are very mistaken will call people names to reduce them to a level where they are then able to harm them. I find that just fascinating, that aspect of humanity. And I think that happens with criminals as well, that they label or they name their victims. They won't say their name. They won't call them by their name. They won't humanize them. So if you think of our incredible teachings in Buddhism that Lord Buddha gave us on equanimity, we know that, okay, we look after our family, we belong to this culture or whatever, but everybody is equal in wanting happiness and avoiding suffering. So if we keep that concept of equanimity going for us and avoid calling people names and labels, it helps us a great deal. Even if we think they've harmed us. And it's a very natural thing to label people or call them a name. It just enables us to do horrible things, to be honest. So back to Manjushri, he's a symbol for the spiritual warrior. Through inner development, Manjushri has realized the ultimate nature of reality. The lotus flower symbolizes renunciation of worldly concerns in order to achieve purity, growing as it does through the murky waters of samsara and suffering to attain enlightenment. And the text, for the realization of emptiness, destroys self-grasping and leads to the end of suffering. And that self-grasping is what I've just referred to, really, which is the the opposite of equanimity, isn't it? It's when we put ourselves as more important and more worthy and more right than others, and then we are able to cause them suffering. We destroy self-grasping, we won't be able to cause suffering. So his sword cuts through our inner enemies that create problems in our relationship with ourselves and with others. So hence the reference to gentleness. It's about destroying conflict, not creating it. And if we destroy our inner conflicts, we'll destroy our outer problems. Okay, so let's move on more to these qualities here. So to develop spiritually, we need to develop our inner world. So let's think about going away from the warrior being physically strong, yeah, but a spiritual warrior. The hardship is letting go of untruths. So we need the strength to enable us to let go of those untruths. Yeah. So we need inner strength. We really need strong inner strength. It's got to be really powerful. If only we could join the gym and do it, but there you go. We have Buddhism instead. So courage leads to contentment because you're relying less and less on material rewards and hedonistic pursuits of pleasure. You give up the desperate craving, yeah, for genuine contentment. It takes courage to give up the things we think we love. We think we love, and the things we think make us who we are. That ego identity. It takes a lifetime to get somewhere, and then of course we're moving on in the next lifetime. Compassion leads to fearlessness because your ego has less to fear. There's less self-grasping and less self-cherishing because your focus has shifted to others. We lose that obsessive attitude to ourselves, and the ego is weakened. And that's when we discover a genuine inner strength, when the ego is weakened. Buddhism is full of these wonderful ironies, isn't it? They're almost paradoxes that actually it's destroying the ego that makes us strong. And then inner conviction or strength leads to our genuine source of refuge because you need and you feel a solid sense of support within you. Refuge is so important. Inner refuge. And then the outer objects of refuge support us. And if they're genuine and they represent truth, they represent wisdom, and they represent compassion, which we know they do, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then that's really a huge support system for our inner strength, our inner conviction. And then radical action or discipline leads to self-esteem because you like yourself better. There's less confusion. And self-esteem is a huge issue for so many people. So let's just, before we look at some of these, you remember, I don't know if you can see those very well, but we're basically sensory beings. So the diagram is to show how we experience the world through our senses, which are all perceptual. Yeah, first nanosecond. And these sensory experiences are then received by a mental consciousness and they turn into thoughts, feelings, and emotions conditioned by our habits and tendencies. I've always done it this way, so I'm always going to do it that way. Why is there a negative bias? Because we're hardwired for threats to our survival. But we aren't animals anymore. Yeah? We have these incredible rational brains. So we need to move ourselves as quickly and as fervently as possible away from the animal tendencies of survival. So when we become inner beings, we develop the awareness of inner threats to our spiritual development and survival, our spiritual survival. Okay? So we're just going from outer, all these negative emotions coming up because I need to survive, and my ego is freaking out, into inner beings who recognize that all those negative, unwholesome aspects of consciousness like arrogance, anger, hatred, envy are all what we perceive to be threats. They're just threats to the ego. Yeah. So we have a choice. And that of course, is what we're practicing when we're practicing stabilizing the mind and we're practicing developing destructive qualities. Sorry, when we're developing constructive qualities and letting go of destructive attitudes of mind. So we know that the main threat, as I've said before, is the self-grasping I. So let's just remind ourselves what we mean by the nature of the self. We know that a person is made up of all these bits and pieces, like you get an IKEA parcel and it says a table when you open it up and there's screws and nails and brackets and maybe legs and a top, yeah? Well, we're the five aggregates, aren't we? All in the nature of suffering. So if we understand this, then we can also understand that there's no soul, nothing is permanent. You can't go into that box and go, oh, there's the essence of the table. I've got it now. Yeah, it's not there. It's nothing is permanent, and they all kind of come together, and then they all start falling apart as well. Yeah, and they're only a table labeled for us to make use of. Eventually exists, but ultimately no essence, no soul. Three marks of existence remind ourselves: no soul, impermanence, and suffering. So five aggregates. We've got form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. The body is a form, pleasure, displeasure, indifference, feelings, our perceptions, recognition of sensory objects, discrimination, compositional factors. That's a big one. That's the karmic imprints, everything that influences our actions of body, speech, and mind. And then consciousness. Together, these create the illusion of the self, which is why we do all these wonderful meditations on emptiness, to try and locate where is this self. So when we understand how these work, we can undo the creation of the self and destroy the illusions. And we keep practicing it. Yeah. We see the body as a permanent and as a basis for the label I. Here I am. And we grasp onto this idea of self and cherish it, self-cherishing. This ironically leads to suffering as we're in a constant state of trying to please it and satisfy it, like a mother with a fractious baby. Just had one visiting my grandson. He's nearly 2. Total center of the universe. Huge ego baby. Not because he's, bad, but just babies are just and they are. They want everything. I am the center of the universe. Yeah. So, like a mother with a fractious baby, I can make this happy. I can make this baby happy. And you spend your whole life trying to do that. Yeah. If we think of all the examples of body enhancing techniques, all that pain and disfigurement of our natural selves to create a version that current society deems perfect. So temporary, isn't it? Yeah? Mind has defilements, and the body is in the nature of suffering because we're going to age, we get sick, we die, impermanence. No soul, no eternal essence, constant change. There's no ultimate self, just a basis, five aggregates, and the label for this lifetime. Yeah. So we know that the defilements stem from self-grasping and self-cherishing because we don't understand the nature of reality. That's what we call ignorance. Yeah. The antidote for ignorance is wisdom. And there's Manjushri with his flaming sword, the view of emptiness. Understanding that the source of suffering is ignorance. We then recognize that that ignorance is bringing attachment and aversion from all those other defilements, and afflictions arise. Yeah? So that's a little picture of the self-grasping. I'm sure you've heard it before. So that is the inner stuff that's going on. Now, not only are we dealing with the inner attacks, yeah, the inner attacks on how we perceive reality, but externally, the world is bringing us all this crazy stuff which we think it brings us happiness and is actually just bringing us temporary pleasure if we're lucky. So this is Lama Zopa. As long as we're in samsara, whatever our lifestyle in the world, it's only suffering. Before we enter that lifestyle, we see samsara as a beautiful park, pleasant park. But once we're involved in that lifestyle, we experience so many problems. He doesn't need to tell us, does he, really? Okay, so external stuff, the worldly dharmas, what the world holds to be true. Yeah, and that's how we develop attachment and aversion. The distractions to our senses, triggered by the demands of the ego to achieve satisfaction. Yeah, and as we know, first noble truth, there is no satisfaction. Life is dissatisfaction. So, pleasures of the senses we don't want to experience, losing that lovely hot tub, we don't want to get out of it. But actually, after a while, you get a bit wrinkly and you do want to get out of it. So it's just pleasure. Yeah. We want to be told lovely things. We don't like it when people criticize us. Oh, I mean, if you think about it, we want stuff because we think that makes us happy. We have all we need, but then we want more stuff because we see it and other people have it. We want what they've got, and culture demands it, society demands it. So all that's going on for us all of the time. The internal struggle and then the external influences. Yeah. So renunciation, that lotus, growing through all that stuff. That's samsara, isn't it? Growing through the worldly concerns, so forcing its way up and managing to understand emptiness in some ways and compassion and working it. This is our experience. This is life, isn't it? Yeah. So really, renunciation shouldn't be regarded as negative. It's not a punishment. Yeah. Pema Chodron calls it letting go of holding back. And what she means there is that we know, because we're spiritual practitioners, that all this is stuff and nonsense. It's all superficial. All has its place. We all have to deal with this, that, and the other. But ultimately, it should be nourishing our inequalities, all those qualities mentioned by those teachers. Okay? So what we renounce is a sort of closing down and shutting off from the superficial. And opportunities that arise, we develop this little quiet voice that goes, you should do this. This is good for you. That's what we're trying to tune into. Away from the blah, 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 to the quiet inner voice that whispers. It's whispering that higher self, that Buddha nature. Yeah? Being open to experience and learning as it presents itself. We're being challenged to recognize and understand cyclic existence. That's all. Just see it, cut through the bull, cut through it, see it for what it is. You know, the reality. Just remembering something that somebody said. Oh, yeah, the facility. I think this was the facilities of money and family can actually be invitations to commit negative actions. Poisonous plants have very beautiful flowers, but very tasty foods are often bad for our health. Salt and sugar dulls our senses. Yeah, self-grasping is the cause. We go down these routes. Yeah. So the great masters are asking us merely give up suffering. It's a drug. We turn to it to relieve our suffering, but do not recognize that it's causing us suffering. So the foundation of renunciation is being open to the spiritual life. Understand what we mean by the word spiritual, understand what we need to develop, know that we can make change due to understanding the Dharma, know the enemy within and the enemies without, and understand what is meant by renunciation. Doesn't mean we have to take robes and give up our house and our family. Just recognize what holds us back. I've got this lovely picture of Kundrula here, the self-arisen yogini. Enlightened heroes or warriors are highly altruistic beings who have the wisdom to realize that by dedicating themselves to the welfare of other sentient beings, the fulfillment of their own interest comes automatically as a byproduct. So we enter the Bodhisattva path, which takes us away from that self-obsession. I won't go into that now because I'd like to give you an opportunity for some. I just wanted to mention these because I think these are very interesting when we think how they give rise to destructive emotions. Maybe it's something we can do another time. Just have a look at these and consider. You might latch on to just one or two where you think, oh, I need to think about that one. Self-limitations of low self-esteem, guilt, skepticism, being judgmental and overcritical or cynical, perfectionism, limited worldview, self-shame, pride, improper humility, idolizing people, fear, pretending to be someone we're not, having a negative worldview, laziness, depression, and a lack of trust in others. maybe just pick one to think about. I'm sure, there's a few there for me, that's for sure. And so we're coming to the end now. This is Sogyal Rinpoche. To be a spiritual warrior means to develop a special kind of courage, one that is innately intelligent, gentle, and fearless. Spiritual warriors can still be frightened, but even so, they're courageous enough to taste suffering, to relate clearly to their fundamental fear, and to draw out without evasion the lessons from difficulties. We're stepping out of our shadow identity to become who we really are. That's me. Okay, well, there you all are. So, opportunity for questions, possibly answers. Any questions about that or clarification? Wow.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I got these new headphones. Hi everyone. It's
Is
Danny.
that Danny?
It is. Can you hear
It
me
is.
okay?
Yes, hi, Danny.
Hi, sorry about no camera. But yes, I'm testing these new headphones and seeing if the microphone works and everything. And thank you. Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Okay, well, your headphones work.
Thank you.
Well, Erin. Where's Erin? Oh,
Hi,
there you are, in the corner. Got you. Hello, Erin.
wonderful. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Thank you. That's very nice to hear about all of these qualities. Definitely nice to have words again to try to encapsulate these things that I'm trying to work for. And I
mm,
think I'm just kind of recognizing myself in the world right now, trying to find a balance between working on my own inner world and taking the time to help me feel inspired and not overwhelmed. And then also recognizing that a lot of people around me that I'm close to are pretty overwhelmed right now.
sure.
And I'm trying to find a balance of um, like self-care and caring for others in that space. I don't know if you could say anything to that.
Well, it's a very common point, isn't it? Because Buddhism, for sure, seems to focus on caring for others. But I do like to come back to these aspects of low self-esteem and clarify that we really have a lot of work to do on ourselves. Yeah, on ourselves. And by that, not just being heavy handed, oh, I'm this, I'm that, or the other, but to just recognize, okay, if I have this potential and I have this tendency for that I don't feel I'm good enough, then that is stopping me. So how do I, what are the negative emotions that arise? Now, for instance, jealousy is a common one. I'm just using it as an example. That you look at others or you don't think you're as good as them. So that's a low self-esteem thing. So it might not be jealousy in terms of thinking that others, oh, I wish they weren't like this, and then you're nasty towards them. It's more a sense of looking at them and thinking, I'm not as good as. I'm not as good as. Oh, they're doing this every day. or they seem to be really nice people and I'm not that person. Yeah. So if we're going to find that as an example, that is an aspect of jealousy. It's not one that is often talked about, but what you're doing is you're comparing yourself negatively to somebody else. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's your issue, Erin. I'm just trying to use an example. So that is a kind of low self-esteem which leads to a destructive emotion. So in order to take care of ourselves, that is what we mean. Not just all the, go for nice country walks and have massage and do yoga. That's one aspect of self-care, which is good too. We need that health. But to also care for that scared, that frightened, that person inside that is looking at others and not feeling good enough. When Lama Yeshe, he's written a wonderful book called Introduction to Tantra. And there's so many quotes in that, about we're all perfect. We just need to realize it. Now, he's not saying get proud, think of yourself as great. It's just recognizing that whatever we have, whoever we are as a human being, we've got everything we need. And it always reminds me of that Christian quote, Jesus's quote about, was it Jesus when he said, don't hide your light under a bushel? And I never really understood what a bushel was, but it sounds like a big mound. And, your light stuck under it. And really, that is what we're talking about. Buddha nature being stuck under a great big bushel of low self-esteem, which leads to destructive tendencies and attitudes. So why don't we see that as being self-care? Recognize your goodness. Recognize what you're doing. You're sitting here now, I don't know what the weather's like there, but the weather's been lovely today. You're sitting here on a Sunday morning, it's sunny outside and you're listening to the Dharma, yeah, with a bunch of people. Why? Just that in itself is an amazing choice. You are on a spiritual path. So it really is. Bushel is a barrel or basket used to store things like grain in the old days. There you go. That's what a bush is. We saw it as a bush of some kind. But anyway, I'm getting mixed up with burning bushes now. Getting all my Christian stories mixed up. So that's the main message. It's we have everything we need. We have goodness. We have good intentions, and those are what we're taking care of. When we talk about self-care, it's reminding ourselves, not are we? I can't say that you're suffering from Victorian guilt because you're not English, but we would call it Victorian guilt. It's this sense of, or even maybe coming from certain Christian teachings, and we're just not good enough. We're sinners. We're sinners. We have to lose that as Buddhists, and that is a real cultural thing that we've carried on. I've certainly seen it amongst others and with myself that it's only through somebody else, only through a deity that we can become perfect. It's not true in Buddhism. It's just not true. We have everything we need to be perfect. So self-care all the way. And actually, when we're working on the self-care, then our obsession with ourselves will just disintegrate and we'll be able to care for others. And I think that stops a lot of us. Because if you look at all these teachers, I'm just continually amazed, and I have had a lot of input from some great teachers over these months. And you see them in pictures or, from a distance, and they're kind of quite strong male, a majority of them. And then when you meet them, the way they talk, with humility, and yet there's absolute self-confidence there. Confidence is in the Buddha nature, and all that wisdom and compassion they're carrying. That's where our confidence lies, and we've got it. So don't be afraid of him. Any more questions? I hope that helped.
I have a question. This is Yvonne. Can you speak more to renunciation? Like what does that
I
look
can't
like?
see you. Oh,
Oh,
Yvonne, yes, I've got you.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
I
don't
just
have a
see a little line. Sorry,
no
go on.
I don't have a camera. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So can you speak more to renunciation? What does that look like in a everyday kind of life? I mean, I guess I'm just wondering what that would be like for someone to do that in their own life or family, or I don't know, just more of what that looks like, what that is.
Well, I think renunciation in what I would call, the householder's life, like you and me, I'm assuming, it is obviously we're not going to sell everything and leave our family and walk the plains with our begging bowl. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Now, you that's not to diminish that idea of renunciation. It works in certain cultures, and it's wonderful if you're there. But actually, we can practice renunciation in the fact that we let go of expectations of samsara. Just simply that. We have so many expectations. So if we just, I expect my family to behave this way, or they may not. And then we just causes us so much anxiety and worry, takes up so much energy. They're human beings, and they're going to go their own way, and they're going to do things which we don't think is good for them. Yeah. And there's only so much we can do, but our expectations of them to be certain in a certain relationship with us or to treat us in a certain way. Or I would say letting go of expectations is very much a strong aspect of renunciation. Letting go of expectations of jobs and careers, letting go of expectations of wanting a bigger house, a better house, this, that, and the other, a car or whatever. It's very much to do with expectations in our life. And when we start to just, oh, well, that's how they are, oh, well, that's their mood today, then again, we're not taking it on board as being something to do with me. The way they're acting is because I'm a bad mother. The way they're acting is because I didn't do this when they were 5. I don't know, whatever it is that you blame that you have guilt for, maybe. Yeah. And so renunciation, also when Pema Chodron talks about it as being letting go of that which is holding us back. Holding us back in what? Holding us back in what? Yeah. She doesn't mean, to rise in status, she means holding us back and keeping us in this. Often householders create quite a small world for themselves. How many people said to me, oh my goodness, you're going to India at your age? Yeah, yeah. And it made me nervous. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to India at my age. That's other people, isn't it? Yeah, that's other people. And so we are quite limited. I'll get to this age and then I'll retire and I won't do much, maybe go on a nice holiday. We still stick ourselves into certain conventional ways of behavior. So that's what's holding us back, I think. I think that's what Pema Chodron is also talking about when she's talking about letting go of that which is holding us back. It's learning to listen to the whisper, and maybe you, like me, mature now, and you've actually reached that wonderful point in your life where where actually, if you really consider it, you're free. You're much more free than you were when you were raising kids and having to hold down a job and pay them all, I don't know, whatever. Maybe I'm just talking about my age group. Whereas talking, somebody sort of mentioned the other day is that, as women, and I can only see pictures of women, I know there's men here, but there's also quite a lot of women. Well, fantastic is the menopause. How fantastic is the menopause? It totally frees us. We don't have to worry about getting pregnant. We start to get wrinkly, unless we take something to stop us getting wrinkly. I don't know. I know a few women who did that. But basically, I don't wish to embarrass any men here, but basically well, we've done that. We've done being a wife and being a sex object, and now nobody sees me. That's fantastic. I'm invisible. The freedom, the freedom, the menopause and being an older woman. And they talk about, how wonderful it is that, when Indian men, traditionally had brought up their families and they got old, they could then leave home and become spiritual wanderers. How much more suited a woman is to being that? Because a man doesn't lose his sexual desires. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that culturally with that. I think I'm just referring to the fact there's a lot of things that culturally and socially hold us back, which we can step away from if we have the courage of the convictions of our Dharma understanding. It's also scary. Renunciation is scary. It's the actual word, to renounce, to give up that which has brought us comfort and stability. Yeah. But then if we don't step through that door and find another world which gives us so much more. If we're doing it for the right reasons, the spiritual reasons. Did that answer you?
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It explained
Okay.
very well. Thank you.
If there's another question, we can have one more question and then maybe we can finish with a short meditation. Are we all okay? Shall we do some meditation now then to the end? Is that okay? Fabulous. Okay. Okay, so just let all that settle. Let's take some deep breaths. Letting the tension go from your body and your mind. Find your posture. And we'll just do a few rounds of mindfulness of the breath. Letting go of thoughts now, just letting all that stimulation just sink into the heart. And just breathe. Perhaps we can do a short meditation on Tonglen, taking and giving. It's a time of such suffering in the world without feeling any sense of guilt, perhaps, that we're not suffering, or a sense of helplessness. This idea of self-care, this helps us too when we do Tonglen. And we can also, in our hearts, just want the absolute opposite of trouble and prejudice and all these terrible things that are going on right now. We can take it away and know that in our hearts we are these incredibly good people, the lights that are shining in the world. And we can help others just by being us. So I want you to visualize in the space before you, just a meter or so away, a place or people who are suffering. And without any sense of guilt or helplessness, just recognize them as fellow sentient beings in the throes of some awful karmic tragedy where they are experiencing dreadful environmental or health, whatever issues, just see them. And from your heart, just generate this strong sense of genuine compassion. And my brothers, my sisters on earth, don't want them to suffer. If you haven't done this meditation before, just go gently. It will all make sense to you. So now visualize on the in-breath into the nostrils that you are taking their suffering in the form of thick black smoke. Breathing it in. You can visualize this cloud right in front of your face. It's disgusting and sooty, and you wouldn't want anybody to experience this. And then as you breathe it in, it comes down to your heart, which is completely covered by a granite-like black rock, which is totally covering your light, your Buddha nature. And as it reaches it, it starts to crack that self-cherishing, egotistic aspect of yourself that is covering up your light. And as it starts to crack it, a little light escapes, which you are able to breathe out and send, giving everything these beings need: food, nourishment, safety, refuge, comfort, whatever it is they need. And their suffering is relieved a little. Now practice this on the breath, mounting the suffering coming in, the rock diminishing, more light being given. So you're taking the suffering and you're giving joy and peace and happiness, well-being. So in silence, we'll practice that for a few minutes. Focus on one thing, then the other, then just get a feel for it all the time. Your self-cherishing rock is becoming slowly destroyed and more light. Inner Buddha nature is being released. We'll focus now beyond seeing that you have given all these wonderful qualities to these beings, and they are now virtually released from their suffering. And that they, in turn, have enabled you to destroy your self-cherishing, our obsession with ourselves, our own problems, our own faults, our own I'm not this, I'm not that. It's just released it. And your Buddha nature, your compassion, your wisdom, all those wonderful spiritual qualities have been liberated. So work towards there being only light amongst those you have prayed for. The self-cherishing black rock who have totally disintegrated, so that there is only light coming from within you. This stream of light moving like a cycle. And then dissolve all the beings into light. And just take that light in now, in front of your face, completely transformed. Completely enriching your own Buddha nature as you breathe it in. So there is just light at your heart. The inner core of your being, total light, a wellspring, a resource you can constantly draw from. It will never diminish, only grow. If you wish, you can see it as a Buddha, your inner Buddha nature. And then just absorb the light and sit there in a sense of great well-being. And you can dedicate all your time, all the merit that you've created through sharing this Dharma today together to quickly becoming enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And bring your meditation to an end. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.